Hello, beautiful, and welcome to the Moms Talk Sex podcast with me, More Yovington, your host. I am so excited for this conversation today because for the first time, we're talking about something that I myself have not even heard of. And so I'm really excited to have the beautiful Atara here with me today. Hi.
Hi, Moore. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you, and I'm excited to learn more about this topic for myself.
Mhm.
So I'm sure that my listeners are just as excited to listen to. So, how about you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are, what it is that you do in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, my name is Atara Parkinson, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. And that means I'm a mental health worker. I've been in the field of mental health for 14 years, which makes me feel super old every time I say that. And I just love what I do. I get to sit with people in their most difficult moments and some of their greatest joys in life, right? And triumphs. In my personal journey, I had two major health crashes in my life. The first one was after graduate school. I was just running myself really hard, doing my classwork, doing my practicum, and working full time. And about a year after that, right after I got married, actually, my body was like, no, we're not doing this anymore. And I could not get out of bed for more than 2 hours at a time.
Oh,
Yeah, I would get up and do the stuff and get ready for the day. And I was so exhausted just from that. I had to get back in bed. And long story short, I, of course, sought out medical help. And in the allopathic world, I went to my doctor. Great, we're going to run your labs. And I came back a couple weeks later and he went, well, nothing wrong with you. I was like,
mhm.
no, there's something wrong. Something's not right here. And so basically, I started searching out some other answers, and we did some neurotransmitter testing, and we also tracked my sleep. And I was waking up 17 times a night. So I
Wow.
was, yeah, I was not entering into that deep, restful sleep, which we need. So it makes sense, right? Why I was constantly exhausted. All my fight or flight hormones were through the roof, or neurotransmitters were through the roof, and my calming ones were non existent. So that's what really started to shape my life. And then you fast forward a couple of years, and I had kid one and then baby number two 18 months later, and then
Oh,
18 months after that. Oh yeah, I was gonna say it worked. It was beautiful though, but it was a lot.
yeah.
So we had three children essentially in 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a
That's a
lot, and then
lot.
COVID hit, y'all.
Yeah.
COVID hit.
Oh,
I was like, oh my gosh, yeah. So you can imagine I was pretty severely depleted
yeah.
at this point, and what we were chatting a little bit about was minerals. And so I had gotten my health online. I was eating healthy, I was eating whole foods, I had switched a lot of that, but there was still something really, really missing. And this showed up for me as postpartum rage, which
Mhm.
is a facet, and now we know, of postpartum anxiety. And I'm so thankful that we've had this language now in the last couple of years really emerged. But at the time, this was 8 years ago, it was just all postpartum depression. So if you don't want to hurt yourself, don't want to hurt your baby, shrug, basically, right? Like, okay, you're probably going to be fine. But I really wasn't. I was paralyzed by decision making. I felt like worried about everything. Particularly for me, it was my baby's sleep. I had this really severe anxiety that if he didn't get enough sleep, that he was going to end up with brain issues or ADHD or something like that. And so that really dictated my whole life. And
Mhm.
now I know that that was because I was really depleted in my minerals, which are protective around your mental health. So I'm going to pause. That's kind of a little bit about my journey.
Wow, that's a lot to impact. And first, what's really interesting for me interviewing so many women on this show that I interview a lot of women that experience postpartum depression, and it shows
Mm-hmm.
up in different ways in their life.
Yeah.
And I love how you kind of broke it down, like to the rage, the anxiety, really pinpointing what it is that was actually creating the problem. But it seems like underneath the surface of all of that was something a lot more deep that happened was the minerals were actually creating this. And what I realized with a lot of my clients is for them, it's the trauma that activates this stuff. So it's
Mhm.
very interesting to see from different perspectives, right? So if
Yes.
it's not a trauma that you experience, but you're
Mhm.
still feeling this way, this could
Mhm.
also be, like you're saying, a deficiency in your minerals. Yes?
Absolutely. Yeah. And as a therapist, I love saying it's an and both conversation
Yes.
because there's no line here across our neck, right? Separating our body from our brain and mind. And I'm really thankful to be in an era where we're recognizing this and starting to integrate practices, right?
Yes.
So maybe something has happened. And I love that you bring up the word trauma because absolutely, my first three babies were in the NICU.
Yeah.
So talk about birth trauma, talk about feeling out of control. So absolutely, this really spurred on
All
this.
those emotions.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yep. And the stress, and we'll talk about stress in a minute more in detail on how that impacts minerals, but stress was super heightened. And that's not even touching like just being a new mom.
Right.
Just being a new mom is so stressful. You're learning how to do a job and be a different person and be in the world in a whole different way. Your brain is shifting so much in this phase. I love talking about mom brain in particular
Yeah,
because this is a real change. Like, this is
it is.
literally your brain is changing to make new room for information on how to care for your baby. So,
Right.
it can be really, I think it was really freeing for me to understand, like, I'm just not falling apart here. There are
Yeah.
things that are happening, and it took a lot of that guilt away for me. But particularly minerals, right? We lose 10% of our minerals just
Wow.
in pregnancy alone,
That's
right? And
crazy.
yeah, it's a lot, and that's not even including breastfeeding. So if we are going into a pregnancy already deficient in minerals, which most of us are, and then we're also losing a bunch during pregnancy because it goes to the baby, right?
Yeah.
So things, and let's make this really applicable for people. Things like leg cramps, right? Charlie horses are infamous
Right.
in pregnancy. Things like hair loss,
Yeah.
our teeth deteriorating during pregnancy. I hear a lot of women complain about this. These are all signs and symptoms that your minerals are being essentially leached from your body.
Wow.
Because, yeah, those are the first places we're going to see it show up. Another really common one is hormones and starting to
Hmm.
have hormonal imbalances because
Right.
minerals dictate hormones. And when our
Mhm.
minerals aren't balanced or we don't have them in high enough amounts in our body, then our body will start to um not be able to create the hormones that we need or that were normal amounts for us previously.
I love that you're bringing this up. Does Let me ask you this. I don't know if you heard about the women that turn their placenta into pills and end up
Mhm,
taking those. All right,
mhm,
after pregnancy, I did that with all three of my kids,
mhm.
because my midwife was gun ho about it, and she said she would see amazing transformations with women right after birth, right?
Yeah,
And
yes.
so I was doing that, but I'm curious if that plays into all of this.
Mhm. Absolutely. And there's kind of a mixed bag in the holistic community about that. Some people are absolutely like, yes, 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 do it. And some are like, it didn't have an impact, or even it made me feel funky. And so that's what I would really encourage women to do as well. I think we have the tendency to be disconnected from ourselves and
Right.
disconnected from our bodies. So tune in, right? If you're sensing that feels good for me, like with my first particularly, I felt like it gave me a lot of energy. How did you feel on it more?
Yeah, I felt like it
Really
gave me a
helpful.
lot of energy. I felt like I was
Okay.
pretty much up and running the next couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really need that. Like, I mean, I rested, but I had energy. I didn't experience postpartum depression with any of my children. I have three. And I feel like it kept me really balanced, if that makes sense.
Good. Yep.
And my midwife was saying, like, you should freeze half of these and keep them for like menopause, you know? It's like, I don't know.
Oh,
I still have a jar in my freezer, I have to tell you.
do you? Oh,
So we'll
wow.
see. I'll let you know.
Okay. Yeah, well, so the placenta is essentially an organ.
Hmm.
Our body not only grows a baby, which is amazing, a human being, it also grows another organ. to sustain the life. And so consuming organ meat is a traditional ancestral practice up
Right.
until maybe like 1950. So I say that's 50 years ago, even though it's not like 70 years ago, right? People were eating liver on a regular
Right.
basis or eating nose to tail using all of the animal. We don't do that anymore in our culture. And it's a detriment to us. Now, let me be really honest. Do I go around eating liver weekly? No, I do not enjoy liver. It's not something I like to eat, but I do take it in a capsule form. And
Hmm.
what that liver provides for me is a lot of the nutrients, minerals particularly, that we do not get from the muscle meat that we historically eat or typically eat in our culture today. So absolutely, I can't say particularly what minerals would be in our placenta. I've never studied that. I have to go after we jump off. I'm going to go research that, but I'm really curious. But I could totally see a crossover there between consuming organ meats in general and why consuming a placenta might really help with energy or mood.
I remember my midwife was saying too that the placenta holds so much of the hormones and the vitamins, right? Of all
Mm-hmm.
of that. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you are giving birth, everything goes to the baby, but this is a way
Mm-hmm.
to bring it all back to your body. And that
Mm-hmm.
was a big part that made sense to me. I'm like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense that actually this is for me, right? It
Yes.
was feeding my baby this whole time. Now it can also support me.
Yep.
So what specific minerals have you noticed maybe that women are
Mm-hmm.
being deficient and it's causing these reactions in their bodies?
Yep. So it's very nuanced. We won't be able to get into all of the important ones today, but what I like to hit on, yeah, are the crucial four.
Yeah.
And the crucial four being magnesium,
Hmm.
potassium, sodium, and calcium. These are crucial for our bodies. They are the heavy hitters. Absolutely things like B vitamins are really essential for mental health. Selenium, super important, copper. So those are the more nuanced conversations. But with the big four particularly, I will speak to magnesium first because magnesium was a life changer for me because my symptoms being more on that anxiety side, um, I really needed that calming impact that magnesium has. And another way to really look at this is looking at your symptoms and what was problematic, what's showing up for you in life. So mine was, oh my gosh, I've never been an anxious person. I've never been an angry person. What is going on? And when I started taking magnesium, I almost instantly within the first few days started to feel this tension, this constant. A client said it this week, fast forward mode, and that really resonated with me. Feeling like you're constantly in like, I gotta go, go, go. What's the next thing? Okay, plan this, blah, 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 right? That kind of energy. And I really recognized that in myself. I had never been like that. And so magnesium really helped bring that down for me. The other really obvious symptom with magnesium deficiency for me was sugar.
Oh.
I had always had a sweet tooth, but particularly after kids, I could not say no. I wanted sugar, like it was really controlling this craving for sugar. And when I started getting my magnesium on board, it stopped. I mean, sure, do I still eat a bite of ice cream or have a cookie sometimes? Absolutely. But that drive and that need for it was gone. And I could say no, thank you if I needed to. And here's what I've learned is that being magnesium deficient increases sugar craving. Then you consume the sugar, which depletes your magnesium further, and
Mm.
around and around we go. So if also you're noticing, oh my gosh, I cannot say no to my sugar craving, pick up some magnesium and get it in your body.
That's
and
amazing.
it is really amazing. Yeah, really cool stuff. So potassium would be the other really important one that I feel like most women are deficient in. And potassium, really easy ways to get your potassium in. I'm sorry, let me back up. Magnesium is harder to get from food. It's possible, but it's because we're so deficient. It's typically something that I do recommend in a supplement form.
Okay.
Please consult your doctor too. We got to say that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We're
The
not
second,
doctors. Don't take
exactly. We're not
it.
doctors. The second being potassium. Potassium is, and the way that I work is getting most of these through food sources. It's a really safe way to get in extra vitamins and minerals because they're balanced, right? I'm not going to overdose on something, which then will throw another mineral off. Minerals are synergistic, meaning they work together, or antagonistic, meaning if I increase one, another one is going to drop. So we got to be really careful with how we go about this. But potassium, a great source that most people love is coconut water. Do you enjoy coconut water?
I don't.
Oh, darn. Okay, we'll get you one. Don't you worry.
But
But
I'll
coconut
find
water, yeah. Coconut water super, super high in potassium. And I love taking it with a squeeze of lime and a little salt in the bottom. And that way I'm getting vitamin C and I'm getting some good quality sodium in there as well. And it tastes delicious and it just, ooh, it hits me so good. So if you're finding at a 2 or 3 o'clock, you're having that slump in your day, get some of that in and watch your body respond to that. Okay, but you don't like coconut water. So what about potatoes more?
I like potatoes.
You love potatoes. Great. There's a reason you love potatoes. And that reason is that your body needs that potassium. And
Oh,
so watching for what foods we crave or that we're drawn to is our body signaling to us actually what we need. So potassium is another food really, really high. And what do you love on your potato?
well, I love making mashed potatoes with garlic.
Yes. Ooh. Do you put butter or cream in your
Yes.
potatoes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's your calcium, right?
Oh,
So here's, yes, how intuitively we are again eating and without even knowing it. Classically in our diet, right? Maybe we'll have a baked potato and we're scooping a big old scoop of butter, sour cream, and salt. Then we're hitting
all the
three.
three.
All
Yeah.
the three, exactly. Or in your mashed potatoes, you're putting that butter and cream, then you're getting
And
your
salt.
calcium and your salt. Exactly. So we're getting all three of those. And so again, our body intuitively knows, and now say I'll qualify that with whole foods, what whole foods it's drawn to. Another great one actually for magnesium is salmon. Do you love
Oh,
salmon?
I love salmon.
I love salmon. And
And we
it
live in the Northwest where we
yes,
have it, so
where
good.
we have abundance. Oh, I'm so thankful for that, right?
Me too.
But I love getting salmon at least once a week, and obviously, ideally, wild caught, right? Because it has the most nutrients in it. But that I recognize too. I'm like, oh, I need more magnesium in my body, right? I'm craving salmon right now.
Oh my gosh, I love this. I mean, we
Yes.
have our lox and salmon bagel breakfast every
Ooh,
Saturday.
so good. That okay, that's another way, right? I love what you're saying. Paired again, we're getting that calcium hit, getting that magnesium, and most likely do you put salts on top of it
Yeah,
too?
well, a lot of them the smoked salmon has salt in it.
Oh, delicious. Yeah, exactly. So there are ways, right? And again, just what I think is important for moms is not to feel overwhelmed by, oh my gosh, I have to make these major changes. It could just be small tweaks that we're adding or even subtracting something that we know isn't great for us in our diet. And then this is going to have a cascade effect on our health, on our mental health, on our hormones,
And on your sex life.
on your sex life, right? So I love what you said there because that's so important to for a healthy marriage, a healthy relationship. That's my therapy world, right? That I do. What I found, which was huge, was of course being depleted, of course being postpartum, of course being touched out by all the little children, and feeling really disconnected is the word I'll use from my spouse. And as I got my minerals back on board, and we'll talk about one in particular, which is oysters. And
Mm.
oysters are full of zinc and copper. And actually, even more so, they have the perfect balance of what our body needs of zinc to copper. And
Wow.
I love that because I'm like, oh, God knew exactly what he was doing, right? He put
Yes.
exactly what our body needs into that whole food. And so don't fret if you don't love oysters. If you love oysters, great. Go pick some up from the market and shove them down a couple a day, ideally, right? Every single day. But if you don't, that's okay too. There's wonderful oyster capsules, which is a
Oh,
yeah, an oyster dehydrated or not dehydrated, freeze dried and then ground up and put into a capsule form. So every morning I just swallow my 3 oysters, and that has changed big time for my personal libido and sex drive after babies. It really saved us, to be honest.
That is amazing. So I'm curious, like, what is the difference between taking the actual oyster capsule versus grabbing copper and zinc,
Mm,
like
separately. Yes.
separately, or, or from
Okay.
a component, you
Yep,
know?
great question. So when we're taking them separately, two things are happening. One, it's a lot harder to get that balance, making sure you're getting that ratio right. It
Yeah,
requires, I don't know about y'all, I don't enjoy math. I'm not gonna sit down and like write out the math of what I need in milligrams and compare the ratio 7 to 1, right? I'm just not gonna do it. So if I'm taking it in the oyster form, I know that it's the perfect amount. Number
wow.
two, it's bioavailable. So what happens often, have you ever noticed when you take your vitamin or you take your supplement that your urine is bright yellow?
Yeah,
What that is basically that vitamin going through your system and being flushed out the other end.
yeah,
Not ideal, right? Why are we paying big bucks to just have all of it flushed through our system and not
that's
actually
true.
be absorbed? And so natural food sources that are out there are going to be absorbed because they're food. It's
Yeah.
still an oyster, but I'm just not getting the taste or texture of it, but it's being absorbed the same way into my body. And I'll do a caveat, and this is what I work with clients on, is gut health too. Obviously, we want our gut to be able to absorb all of that nutrients, and these are the details that I go into when working with clients.
I love it. So from your experience, let's focus on the oyster part because we're talking about
Okay.
sex here. And I feel like
Yes.
that's what we should tune into because like I said, this is the first time I'm hearing about this. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing to have a supplement that can actually raise your libido. I
Yes.
know on the man end of it, a lot of times there's the Viagra and all those kind of medicines they can take. When it comes to women, there isn't a lot of that. And so I
Right.
love these kind of conversations where we can actually help women really tune into something else that they can take like this. So how
Yes.
did you find out about this? As I'm really curious about that.
Yeah. So, like I said, my deep dive started 10 plus years ago, 10, 11 years ago, and I got on the right track of whole food eating, which changed my life. But then when I discovered minerals, it was through, she's on Instagram and she has a Patreon that is like a powerhouse of information. Her name is Kaylee Mason, and her Instagram is called Nutrition Elements, and
Mhm.
she is just so knowledgeable. She is like one of my gurus that I go to for like all the information, and she is so helpful and amazing. So even if you got on her Patreon, it would do you such a service. So that's why I got really knowledgeable on some of these topics and a few other sources, but she's been the main one. And so her in particular, in talking about oysters, again, classically, this is information we know historically. We look back into cultures, and oysters are touted as a
An
superfood,
aphrodisiac.
aphrodisiac.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's accurate. And so we just need to take that information and apply it to where we're at today. And I love what you're saying because it's not just for men, it's also important for women's hormonal health to get good quality food sources that are balancing our minerals, and then we're able to produce the hormones that we need. Um, I think too, something that was super helpful for me, I believe it was Esther Perel, a famous uh, therapist, said, use it or lose it. And
Mm,
that was really helpful for me to hear as well, because I know, and I think many women can relate, you get into a dry spell
yeah.
because the motivation's not there. But before the drive starts coming back, or we even have a desire or want to do that, it I did do it out of love, is what I'd say. I said,
Yeah.
I love my spouse and I know I want him to be happy and he's satisfied from this. So I'm just gonna start engaging again, because I love him. And I'm not talking about in a coercive, manipulative way, right? Hear that
No.
clearly.
Yeah.
But just that was a decision I made. And then as that started happening with more frequency, I also started to shift, and my sex drive, I saw also my sex drive start to increase as well because I was using it. I was
Yeah.
using my libido. I was getting engaged in that way again. And then I started to see things shift.
I wish more women would realize how much having true whole intimacy is actually for them.
Yes.
You know, I feel like as women, it's one of the first things that we write off as and put
Mhm.
on the man. And if we could just
Mhm.
realize that we need it for us,
Yes.
I think the shift would be so huge because we just forget how it actually ignites everything for us inside of us. And when we turn off that power, that fire
Mhm.
inside of us, it
Mm.
also turns off the fire in everything that we do.
Oh,
And we don't realize that. And
yeah.
so, if you're out there and you're listening and you're feeling like you are doing it for your husband, remember that it's also for you. It's
Yes.
also
That's
for you.
beautiful.
Even if it's hard to see at the moment,
Yeah.
the minute you light that fire up, it will just
Mm.
keep coming and will
Mm.
create so much more for you in your life too.
That I love that. So well said. And I think about like the feminine energy,
Mhm.
right, that exists in us and the power of that and reconnecting to
Yes.
that. And I think in the postpartum period, women get really disconnected because maybe overwhelmed because a trauma happened. The list goes on and on. Where I don't think we're well trained in our society of how to transition into motherhood. And some of it I see with clients is grieving the
Yes.
maiden, right?
Yes.
That I was all of like, so it's never, I don't think it's almost never one factor. It's like this
Right.
multi-layered experience, but absolutely reconnecting with what that power is within yourself is
Yes.
can be really life changing.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love this so much. So where do you, okay, so I have a few like summarizing up. I was
Sure.
going to ask if people want to work with you where they can find you, but I'm also curious where they can find these minerals.
Yes. Okay. So let's start with the minerals and then I'll move into how to find me. So minerals, I'll throw out a couple specifics. So magnesium, some ones that I love is smidge, SMIDGE, like a smidge of something. Their morning magnesium, better than a cup of coffee. It's amazing. I take 2 to 3 every morning. I feel amazing, great. Um, in the evening, I love taking Mother Earth Minerals magnesium, but I use on my kids bath flakes. So you can throw a handful of magnesium flakes in the bathtub, and then you could soak your feet in there for 15 minutes
Oh,
as they're playing around, and your body absorbs it through the skin. And that's a great way. It gives me great sleep. You could also use an oil. The oil, it kind of can burn some people if you have sensitive skin. So put it with like a coconut oil or something. And then the last one would be Earthly's Good Night, or yeah, I think it's Good Night or Night Night lotion. And that's one we also use on our kids. So those are magnesium. Potassium, we talked about some food sources, but there's more out there. Apricots is another great one. And we could talk about that more. You could also just Google, right? Some of the best foods
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
potassium. Calcium's pretty obvious. Obviously, high quality and raw dairy sources are top notch. But a lot of people don't know calcium's actually found in some fish and some other places. So calcium is a food source one too, and then sodium would be the last one. And sodium's not a problem typically for people. Just make sure you're salting your food appropriately, and if you feel yourself drawn to sodium, know that that's probably for a reason. So those are some of the like kind of overarching places to get your minerals. There's, like I said, there's lots of free information out there, and that will lead me into that's what I do on my Instagram and my Facebook.
Okay.
Is I
Perfect.
love giving free information about how to get these minerals in. You know, I have a great source of all I post on all the magnesiums, for example, that I recommend. Bacon. Oh, that's the one I always forget. Bacon for potassium. People love to be told, yeah, eat more bacon. What? Yeah, really good potassium and B vitamins. That's why people love starting the day with bacon because it gives you that boost of energy that you need. So yeah, I just have lots of posts like that, like the benefits of steak, red meat, for example, on and on. I should do one on potatoes. You've inspired me. I'm gonna do one on potatoes today.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so
where
that's
does
on.
someone get those oyster? Because you were talking about
Oh,
liver and oyster things, and I haven't
yes.
seen those like typically in the store.
Thank you. Okay, so beef organs. My two favorite sources are perfect supplements. And
Mhm.
why we go here, okay, these are grass-fed animals. They're well cared for, and they're eating quality food in their diet, which is then what we want to get in our
Right.
diet. So perfect supplements. And then the second one would be the Code Age, CODEAGE. Both of these third-party tested, really high quality sources for beef liver, or you can do a multi-organ where you're getting several of the organs all in one. The oysters, again, I'm going to mention nutritional elements. She loves, and my favorite too, is Oyster Max. Very, very high quality. You can find other oyster supplements on the market. Flip around that label and make sure there's no fillers in there. There's no other junk. You want a really high quality source of all that's in there is oysters. So Oyster Max is my favorite. I know, I think what brand it's called. Oh, Smidge has one too. Smidge
Okay.
has an oyster supplement as well on their website. And so typically what I do is I go for sales, right? Because these
Okay.
things can get expensive. So I just kind of try to make a bundle or make a sale, find a sale for one of the websites, and that's where I'll buy them for the week.
Okay. I love it.
Yep.
This is so great. So, where can we find you on Instagram and Facebook and all the things?
Yes. So my Instagram is atara.parkinson, and my Facebook is my business page, and you just type in Atara Parkinson, I'll pop right up. And also feel free to email me directly, right? If you feel like, whoa, this really hit me. I need to work on this stuff. I'm actually running a fall special. So for the next 2 months, I'll have $300 off my 12-week package. And this is you and I are meeting for our 50 minutes, 50, one-on-one, and we're going into the details of like, what are you seeing pop up? Where do you want to focus? Where can we guide you to be most helpful and impactful in what you're struggling with? And my email is ataraparkinson@protonmail.com.
I love this so much. Thank you for this conversation. It was
Yes.
top notch.
Oh, good.
Yes. And I hope you guys listening out there, I hope this was a big contribution for you and for your
Absolutely.
families and for your bodies. I hope you go out and seek some of these cool minerals and see what your deficiency is happening and how you can elevate it and I would say balance it out. And we
Mm-hmm.
will both love from here to hear from you. So thanks for
Yes.
tuning in this week, and we will tune in again next week. Have a beautiful rest
Yes.
of your day. Bye.